Michael Grinder. I want to share with you the foundations of ENVoY, how it came about, why we have the title it is, and what benefits you have by being a practitioner of it. So I taught for 18 years, but I was more interested in terms of why when I was good, was it luck? Or did I actually have some skills that I had made habit? So what did I do? After teaching for a number of years on 3 different levels, I decided to become an educational coach. Have my own little camping chair. We'd go into a classroom with invitation, permission only, and I would take notes, watching the interaction between the teacher, the student, and the class as a whole, and tried to figure out from my notes, could we create sets of skills that are duplicable, that are transferable to any level of education. So we now do teaching to teachers that are early primary, middle school, high school, and even tertiary level. Why? Because management is the key to creating more time to do teaching. But you got to preserve relationships at the same time. So I'd take my notes and I'd kind of organize them in such a way so that I could create different sections of the book. Notice the title, ENVoY. Well, the 4 capital letters stand for Educational Nonverbal Yardsticks. What a mistake. I was just doing teachers here in America. It's been translated into 7 languages. They don't have the same wording. Yardsticks? They have meters. So that was really quite a joke as an author. What I found was, in America, educational nonverbal yardsticks make sense. If you looked at the German version and you were going to translate it back into English, it would say, without many words, which is a really good title. But back to America. So we couldn't do ENVoY, envy, not good public relationships. So we had to stick in a small O. So now we have 2 words in one. The original 4 capital letters, and then the 5 letters that stand for ambassador. And what we do as our symbol of the ambassador, only in the area of classroom management, is you want to be quiet as a mouse. The more you go nonverbal, the easier it is. So we can look at the classroom through what's called educational binoculars. One tube looks at management, the other one looks at curriculum. They overlap like crazy, especially in the area of engagement. So what is ENVoY based on? Well, if you look at the 2 capitalized letters in the middle, the N and the V, they stand for nonverbals. Nonverbals have to do with what we do visually with our eye contact, what our voice pattern is like, how we do our body, and how we do our breathing. Each of those make a huge difference in terms of preserving relationships with the students, making management much, much shorter and quicker. Let's get back to why we became a teacher. It wasn't because we wanted to be managers. If you want that, go to the penal system. You get to manage all the time. We became teachers to do curriculum. So let's do the 2 we need, management, to get back to doing what we love, curriculum. We want to talk about nonverbals, the 4 categories. Pretend that these magnetized marbles are kind of lime green, and they represent all the things you can do visually, especially eye contact, when to make it, when not to make it. So we're going to set those down, and we're going to pick up representation of all the auditory, your voice patterns. Credible, approachable, friendly, businesslike. Going to be represented by the red marbles. Kind of purple, blue is your kinesthetics. Standing close, standing far. Palms up, palms down. All the nonverbals that we call kinesthetic nonverbals. And then the last one is going to be kind of an earth tone brown, indicating the whole area of breathing. Now, what you're going to find is these are never separated, as represented by this little marble that is one side has the blue, purple representing the kinesthetic, and the other side representing almost the breathing. It's connected. Now, why are we doing all this? You almost have to use and learn each of these sets of skills together. Then when you go into the classroom, life is never the same. Sometimes they'll separate like this, and the next minute, they'll separate a different way. So how do you interconnect all of them? You practice eye contact, when to, when not to, voice patterns, when to be auditory, when to be auditory credible, auditory approachable, when to stand with your weight on both feet, when to stand with the weight on one leg more than the other, talking with your palms down and your palms up, and then making sure you breathe low at all times. Nonverbals, the foundation of ENVoY and everything else I ever teach. So let's look at some examples that ENVoY teaches you. Let's look at some of the visual examples. Eye contact. You know, we're overtrained in eye contact. We're trained to look and make eye contact with each person, which is fine when you're doing curriculum, but not when you're doing management. Example, you have a positive interaction with someone, make sure you have eye contact, works really well. But you have to do management with someone. As soon as you look at that person, you may actually change that person into being more aggressive or passively resistant. So if you can, when you're managing, either look at their work or direct them back to something that they should be looking at, such as the instructions on the board. Eye contact, be prudent. Positive interactions, make it. Negative interactions, avoid it. Let's look at auditory examples. You have two basic voice patterns. One voice pattern is you're talking very businesslike. Your head is still. At the end of anything you say, you take your chin and you drop it down. This indicates non-verbally that it's not open to negotiation. Now you have to be appropriate in terms of the grade level. You do that with first graders, they'll cry. So you have to make sure which grade level you use which level of a credible voice pattern. Chin down, voice flat, head still. It's sending information, not open to negotiation. But you have another voice pattern called being approachable. You tend to kind of move your body a little bit more. Your head certainly goes up and down, and it's very, very friendly. This is the voice you use whenever you want a classroom discussion. Hey, class, what do you think of blah, blah, blah? The story we just read, what's your reaction to? That bobbing kind of voice coming from your head bobbing? Whew, that's classroom discussion. That's good. Two voice patterns. Know when to use which. Well, let's look at our kinesthetic nonverbals. I'm going to turn sideways for this. So when you have your head on top of your shoulders and you talk with your head very still, this is what causes that voice pattern to be very credible. To add to it, if you have your palm down and as your head drops, as your chin goes forward and down, and your head goes forward and down, you cause sending information. It's very, very congruent to the students. Teacher means business. But at the same time, you can be very approachable. Turning this way, if your head bobs and your hand goes up and down, you have a rolling kind of a voice pattern. This is the kind of voice pattern you want whenever you want input, whenever you want class discussion, whenever you want to elicit from them participation and engagement. Two voice patterns. Be very specific when to use which. Now our fourth nonverbal is the most important category. It has to do with breathing. Breathing high, shallow, releases chemicals of fight or flight. Breathing low, abdominal, releases chemicals of calmness. Whatever you are doing, especially when managing, breathe low. Because some of us, we get really turned back around. That when I really want to enforce something, I'm going to breathe high. And when you do, that's what damages relationships. Remember, use your visuals. Franklin, the least amount of verbiage when managing, the lower the breathing. That's why we invented ENVoY. Stay relaxed, teachers. You want an example of staying relaxed and how your breathing affects everything else? Go to YouTube. Type in, land the plane on the Hudson River. Hear that voice. Wow, it works. So in addition to ENVoY being based on the educational binoculars, especially on nonverbals, it is also based on what we call RSVP. So RSVP is a French saying that when you're invited to a get-together, you want to respond. Well, this is how we figure out what is the response going on in the classroom. The R stands for the relationship between the teacher and the class and individual students. That is the basis for all success in terms of productivity. The S is going to stand for student success. How well can we individualize, differentiate instruction? And especially after you taught the whole class, going out and working one-on-one, that's especially when we want to individualize. RS, the V stands for going visual. Visual communication is so much more effective than oral communication. So the next time you hear yourself saying something that you've already said within the last 10 minutes, where is it visually? Point to it. If you have nothing to point to, go write it now. Go write it now. Rule of thumb, second time you repeat something, go visual. The last one, the P, pausing. For some reason, pausing lowers the metabolism of the classroom, both for the teacher and the student, and it makes a huge difference. Now, what does ENVoY teach? ENVoY addresses only 2 of those 4. It addresses the idea of the V and the P. Go visual and pause. That is the 2 biggest sets of skills that ENVoY covers. So there's 2 ways to look at that relationship level. One is the relationship between the teacher and the individual student. We have a whole book on that. It's called The Cat in the Doghouse, How to Reach Those Hard-to-Reach Students. But there's one other way of thinking about the relationships. The relationship that you're going to find between the class and the individual student is covered in a book on educational group dynamics called A Healthy Classroom. And it talks about the triangle of the classroom, the teacher, the individual, and the class as a whole. So then different areas we can say will be covered by different books. 3 of those 4 areas have to do with management. But that S, student success, is not covered by these books. So then a lot of times administrators go, well, will it give us higher test scores? No question. Marzano's research is very clear. The relationship between the teacher and the individual student, as demonstrated during management time, is the #1 variable that determines higher test scores. Curriculum. Management will give you more time to be more successful in curriculum. RSVP. So one of the foundations or expansions of ENVoY is to understand where ENVoY fits with what we call the trilogy of classroom management. What does ENVoY do? It preserves relationship. What does the cat in the doghouse do? It establishes relationships with the hard to reach. What does a healthy classroom do? It is the relationship between the student, individual, and the class as a whole. This is where we help our students that need special assistance. You know, as teachers, we can't get around to everyone. We've got to figure out how we get a class to adopt an individual and help their learning. You want to talk about life values, life skills? Having students, while they're still in their formative years, learn how to give, be charitable. This is the book. Our closing remarks are built around 2 works of art. This is a picture of an actual marble structure that is in what's called the San Juan Islands. If you can picture the area of Seattle and Canada, just off the coast, is where this is located. And what it is, it's a massive, massive structure. It is at least 25 feet high. What we're going to do is we're going to give you a closer view of it so you can see a very particular feature about this marble structure. So as you look at this, you'll see that these chairs on the bottom, on the ground floor of this marble structure out in the forest, out in a town, not even in a village, out in the forest. And it really has a most unusual feature right over here. You'll see that one of the columns, the pillars, is not finished, intentionally so. I was so moved by this that I want to show you what I made from it. So the story behind this structure is a man that came from Scotland, and he eventually brought many branches of his family tree to America. And they would assemble once a year in this structure out in the forest. And he always had one column unfinished, because there's a chiseled saying that says, your work is never done. Take time for family. And that's why the family assembled once a year at this appointed time with their names on the back of the chairs so that they could remember the work will be there when you go back tomorrow. But what do you go home to? Where do you get your love and attention? And it's critical to understand. On the really hard days, we have to remind ourselves we're a person as well as a position. And on those really, really hard days, you go home to your person, and your work day is your position. Go home. Go home. And the last work of art that we want to use to describe your professional development is that it's symbolized by this particular person. She is carving out, chiseling her own professional development. You only need 2 or 3 other people. Same level of commitment. Make sure you trust each other. Make sure you vulnerably share. But make sure you continue to grow. You want to use management, but not meanness. Be confident. Be competent. 2 or 3 other people. Take time for your family, but take time for your professional development. Use it wisely. ENVoY is going to help you enjoy that journey. Going to give you guidance in terms of how you and similar colleagues can support each other's journey. You don't want 25 years of the same experience. You want to have 25 separate years. The population in our classrooms are changing. We need methodologies to continue to grow. ENVoY is going to help you enjoy the journey. Michael Grinder, ENVoY. Thank you.